and welcome to update 51, Fire and Fury, the roundtable. I said that the other way around, but whatever. I'm your host, Sinilil, Sasha Banks, whatever you want to call me, or however you know me at this point, and I'd like to introduce to you my guest for today. First up, we have everyone's favorite um, streamer, always does well in tournaments, and is the always loses tournaments. Video Gamer 77. Introduce yourself, man.
I'm not here, I promise. Okay, it's working.
Not here.
I was just making sure everything was running smoothly, and it seems to be.
So yeah,
But yeah,
that's how you
I'm
want to
here.
introduce
Yeah, yeah.
yourself.
I mean, if they don't know me, then they haven't played the game. That I don't know how they're here. I guess I don't know. Hi.
All right. Um, Next, I want to introduce a player that has been missing for a while. We recently found him again, Eazotop.
Hi, I'm back. You might know me for mostly playing Radbow and a bit of Stormbringer as well. I participate in the tournaments when I get the time to, which is not so much lately. And I was waiting for a few changes to the game before coming back, and I got the changes, so I'm happy and I'm back.
Okay, next we have a very special player to my heart. He's currently rank 2 on the leaderboard, and almost always rank 1 for the last 4 seasons now. Shadyhobos.
What's up? I'm Shadyhobos.
Man, a few
Okay.
words.
Man of few words. Man of nice opinions. Okay. Next we have the not owner of the King Puff Cup, but head admin of the King Puff Cup, Dipshit.
Hey all, everyone's favorite Dipshit here. I'm here to explain why everybody's wrong. Yep.
And-
Alright.
And my special guest for today, lead developer over at Beta Dwarf, I think. Probably right. Uncle Ownage.
Hi, yeah, I'm Uncle Ownage. I don't know if I'd call me the lead developer, but I'm in charge of a few things, and amongst them is balance. So this is going to be interesting.
This is gonna be interesting. Everybody is wrong. Says some boxes already. All right. Okay, let's get to it then. We have the biggest change of the patch to start out with. Show them the first slide, gamer.
Got you.
The biggest change instantly.
Biggest change.
So, MORGRUL went from 5 mana to 4. Let's start with you, gamer. What do you think about this?
Still unplayable, probably, unless someone proves otherwise. I guess. My opinion. I feel like there's better cards than the 4 mana slots. That's about it, I guess.
Okay, let's move down the line. Ezo, what do you think?
I would add that the main reason not to play Morgul was that he wasn't hitting hair, and we had the Defensor Chopper that did pretty much the same job and was a good option against DNest. Now that DNest spawns ground minions, I think Morgul could be the solution to play against swarms of small units and Dragon Nest. But yeah, it's 1 less mana, not as effective, so we'll see how it goes.
All right, so, Shady, what is your opinion on the MORGRUL change? Now that you had some time to think about it and everything.
I think he still sucks.
Sucks.
Yeah, it's like he's kind of worthless, you know. Like the better option is still Defenso. He still does everything. That guy doesn't really do that much.
Defense is always a good card, especially after they technically kind of overbuffed it, in my opinion, as well.
A little bit, yeah.
And yeah, so let's go to Dipshit. What is your opinion on it?
So MORGRUL's always been in this weird spot. He's essentially a shock rock that's paired with an elite swarmer, and that makes him a strong bridge control card as a surprise factor, but it's only on your side of the bridge, and going down to 4 mana, it's not going to change much. Like the biggest problem with him is just justifying a slot for him in your deck. It's not that he's worthless. It's just if you had an extra couple card slots, he'd be a card that you might consider putting in. But when you're only limited to 10, it's hard to make that decision. I think what's really holding him back is that he needs a way to roar more than just one time, on spawn and on death.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Dip in a way as well. It's like MORGRUL's kind of like a stun lancers in a way where he's just kind of awkward to fit into your deck, even if you did want him. And but let's actually hear a developer opinion. Uncle, take it away.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Dipshit in the place he's landed. MORGRUL has been an issue because pairing this kind of battle cry or whatever you want to call it with a minion on spawn is kind of difficult when if you overbuff the actual impact that the first thing has, and then you let them spawn a minion, it can easily get out of hand. And that was our approach to it, at least in the beginning. But at the same time, because you can only really spawn him on your own side, it's not nearly as versatile as any kind of spell. So it's hard to gauge the actual value of the roar. I was hoping that reducing it to 4 mana would exactly let you put him in the deck without hampering yourself too much, because at 5 mana, we've seen it with other cards that at 5 mana, you have this issue where the whole deck gets held back by that one card, and reducing it in mana lets you cycle more easily, and could hopefully help this. But I have yet to see anyone play him while I played on ladder today. So I mean, I can't pass judgment on it yet.
I like to bring up something chat's been saying. Now that he's gone down to 4 mana, blind date. And
you don't have the chance of getting him out of blind date now, so that's a good thing, because I mean, as it was, you were always going to drop the blind date more or less at the back of your base rather than on top of the minions.
But he can come out of a walking blind date.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing.
Yeah, but
he can now come out of walking, which is actually a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Walking blind date might actually see some use if we can somehow survive the meta. And now,
looky here.
Okay.
Walking blind date is a great card. Game is retarded.
No, it's not. It's such a bad card.
all right. This is okay. Let's stop beating around the bush. Let's talk about one of the big changes this patch. One of the most controversial changes, the DNest changes. Next slide, gamer.
Got you.
So,
Well, he caught out.
Let's say we lost Sasha.
I'm sorry, I cut out. I cut out for a second. Hello,
Yeah.
hello.
Okay,
Check.
you're
You're
back,
back.
you're back.
Yeah.
All right. You sure? All right. So, let me slowly explain this all. First of all, they buffed. It was given an HP buff of 50, a lifespan increase of 50%. It also had its mana spell restriction removed, where you had to play a 3 mana card, meaning Black Hole, Shock Rock, and now the infamous Spirit Infusion can now be played with it. But it spawns flightless dragons because flying was such a big deal. Let's go down the line very slowly. Again, gamer, your initial thoughts.
Man, why you gotta start with me?
one.
I was playing it and playing against it this morning, and it's insanely powerful. It's really hard to even beat if you're trying to counter it. You still have to play like really well. So I know
Really well.
some people were saying to put the 3 mana restriction on it, maybe it'd be okay. Again, I'm not sure. I feel like if you did that, it might not see play at all.
It loses a lot of what's that. It's burst.
Yeah.
The main issue with it now is that its burst potential is too high.
Yeah,
I think.
I agree. So I'm not sure exactly what would make it right in the sweet spot. I mean, maybe the 3 mana would be fine. It would be more like say Swarmer Totem and stuff, because it'd have like a timing on it. Whereas right now you get a free card from KP, you can spawn multiple dragons, or Milloween you can get a 1 mana card to multiple dragons. That's where you can just go really fast. But it's really hard to beat. even when you're countering it. So I don't know.
All right.
Can I jump in here?
Yeah, you may
Because
jump in.
I feel like
Encourage.
there's
I
gonna be
encourage it.
some repetitions, and I just wanna explain a few of the thoughts behind doing these changes. Because when we're talking about bringing back the 3-mana spell restriction, one of the things we actually wanted with this was to simplify it a little bit, because the 3-mana spell restriction was inelegant, to say the least. And removing that made for a better card, I believe. The question was how to find the balance without it. We believed that making them flightless would have a massive impact, given that they were no longer as specialized and it would require specific counters. But the flightless dragons in a swarm certainly prove for an issue to a lot of people. What we saw happen and what I've seen on the ladder as well is that in some situations with a lot of flightless dragons, when you stun something, they can take it out very quickly because they're high DPS units. They are, however, not very hardy, and it requires the opponent to play specifically to that. It requires an action from him, which we felt was okay when we lost games to people who stunned things and killed it with the flightless dragons. We felt it was okay during testing because it felt like losing to the opponent rather than losing to the deck. And that's something we were going for with this change, making it less coin flippy and making it more about, okay, I have to outplay my opponent or somehow foresee, okay, I know he has a stun blast, I know he has a shock rock. I have to foresee that thing is coming and then battle it accordingly. However, I'm not unopposed to the numbers not being exactly right at the moment. I haven't, if I have to be frank, I haven't encountered a deck at DNest that felt unbeatable on the ladder yet. But I think I need to play a little against some more people, and then we can continue tweaking the numbers based on that. The 45-second lifespan, as you underline here and say that it's massive, it does make for a very long period where you can keep spamming dragons, especially with the low-cost spells, and that might have been an issue. But
yeah, especially because you can cycle into another nest by that point.
Yeah, definitely, and that's where I see the strength of the mana restriction, if we were to bring it back. But we kind of like the card without it. We just need to find a way where it doesn't have that originally. Because, I mean, originally we had a 4-mana dragon nest that spawned flying dragons without a spell restriction for 40 seconds. So I'm pretty confident we can find a place for the flightless dragons without the spell restriction as well.
All right. Thank you, Uncle, in your opinion. Ezo, so I'm sorry that you had to wait your turn a bit, but sure. Your opinion on these changes already.
Just going back to what Uncle said, the fact that they are no longer flying units means that you don't have to have so much anti-air in your deck now as you did before, and that more units can counter them. However, the fact that the nest lasts for 45 seconds and has so many HP makes it so countering it with spells is not really an effective way of dealing with the nest itself. So you have to deal with the pack of dragons. In the late game, that's a lot of units. It's different from the other spawners because you don't generate units at a steady stream like you would with a crossbow guild, because you have the mana acceleration in the game. The longer the game goes on, the more impactful the nest will be because you generate mana more quickly. So I found that for the little time I've tested it, because I'm not very used to DNest, it's pretty weak against Ghost Turret because the crawling whelps are pretty slow and they have low HP. The Colossus is good against them, and the Defensor Chopper is still pretty good, even though not as good because you spawn more small webs than you use.
I think like 6 whelps kills it, or like 5.
All they deal 50 per hit, and it's 550, I think, HP from memory.
It's pretty
so
quick.
It should be 7 hits. But a few spells mixed in should be able to kill the thing. I like the fact that they are no longer air units. I think the 45 seconds is too much, but the fact that they do not fly means that you don't have to take so heavily against it. And I think, as Uncle said, now it's in a spot where it's a numbers game. It's not a fundamental problem with the fact that the webs are flying. So we can just, if it's seen as being too powerful, you can lower the duration of the nest. You can lower its HP, so Fireball can be more effective against it. Now you have more options to fine-tune the nest instead of changing it completely.
Actually thought of like a quick idea, but I'll wait for Shady and Gob to give their opinions. Shady, you're up next.
Okay, so I've been playing DNest a lot these like past season and whatnot. I agree with the change to switching to flightless dragons, because flightless dragons suck, or like suck a lot more than regular dragons. I don't agree with the lifespan though. It's pretty much way too long in my opinion. That's pretty much all I have to say though.
You don't have anything on the HP?
It's not really the HP, because no one really targets the dragon's nest. It's mostly just waiting out the DNest and dealing with the dragons, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, just going back to that, the only meaningful change I can see to the HP buff would be the Setsu jump.
Actually, stop Setsu.
Yeah, Setsu is not as effective against the nest as she used to be.
I actually also seen it earlier. I was seeing it used as a wall to control Volco, spam, and it was actually really hard for Volco to actually get the ability he wanted because of it. So that's also a very interesting idea. You could use it.
And then Volco must be playing some pretty shit cards, mustn't he?
I mean, I was.
It was a bunch of one.
It was. I was doing it, but it was just for like testing purposes. Yeah, but I mean, like, yeah, the only real damaging cards I had in the deck were like Blood Imps and Scrap Hack or something. I don't know, and that doesn't go.
And it makes sense.
Doesn't do 300 damage very quickly. So.
All right. So last opinion, Gob, take us away.
This change. So I had an understanding coming into this that it was only going to be the flightless change, and that had that been all that changed, this would have been more or less the death of Nest decks as we saw it. But with all the other changes included in it, it's we've basically gone back to the old version, except it's even better. The big problem is the Spirit Infusion and Shockrock being paired with Nest, which are both 2 manas, which weren't possible before. You know, Black Hole, not that big a deal. Healing Fireball, it's only a big deal after the infusions get involved. But, you know, I've got a deck right now. It cycles, it has an average mana cost of 2.7 using double DNest, and I can generally end the game before the lifespan of my first nests are up, regardless of what my opponent throws down. They throw down a Colossus, I just hit it with a Shock Rock and it dies. Like, it's ridiculous in that sense. That Spirit Infusion needs to go. Like, it cannot interact with Nest, in my opinion. Like, that is the biggest problem here. You're getting nice tanky dragons, which is supposed to be their weak point, that they're fragile, and you're getting 2 dragons and you're giving them an extra 200 health. Like, that is a big problem.
So I don't exactly agree with that, mostly because the grounded dragons are easier to deal with. They have a whole extra counter. Like, it doesn't matter if you're infusing them. If there's a dragon whelp on top of the dragons, it's gonna kill them.
Well, here's my problem. Like I said, I have this 2.7 deck. It has 2 Dragon's Nest and it has a Succubus in it. So they have to find some way to deal with that Succubus, and that Succubus is going to protect them from all the air units in the game.
Yeah, but I mean, there's going to be more on the board for me as well, then, assumably. You can't look at it you either have to look at it as one small situation or a whole situation, which is over the whole game, right? And if you're talking about the Succubus combined with the dragon, sure, that might be strong, but I'm pretty sure there are at least some ways to deal with it out there.
It's kind of like this. So I play 6 mana with nothing on the board. So you're forced to show what you've got. And by the time it gets to my side, there comes my Succubus, and there comes all my dragons with it. And I'm going to answer your push and basically put you on the back foot. And while you're dealing with my push, I'm already ready to start the next one.
But do you think that's fundamentally because of the infusion? And because of the cycle
The
on
infusion
spells?
help. It's really about the cycle. Like the infusion is the outlier of all those spells that are that cheap. It really helps tank up. An extra shot here or there is what's really going to make my push happen. My dragon against your dragon. There's an extra 100 health there, so he can therefore take 2 more hits, and that will kill your dragon, and then he gets to kill 1 more dragon on top of it. Or if I'm up against another succubus, just having mine with all these 200 health dragons in front of her, that's another big deal.
Okay. My impression of the whole thing with infusion was that the issue was that flying dragons had very few counters. The one weakness they had was being weak health-wise. When you added infusion to it, they became impossible to deal with because they had high damage. It's the same thing as the succubus, basically.
Nah, I actually think the issue is, in general, is just 100 HP. It affects a lot more in the game than you think.
Yeah,
you're getting,
it's quite possible, but I mean, you still have a lot of things that can counter those smaller ones, with flying and so on and so forth. We do not have a flying AoE minion, though, and given that the Dragon Whelps come out in
There is one.
such, there's the ATG. Of course, I did consider taking that. Unfortunately, that one is. That card is a different story, right? It's again so techy. Right now. It's so techy that you're limiting your deck against other decks in a large way if you're putting that in the deck. In any case, if the problem is infusion, then that is the next thing we wanted to look at, and I'm confident we can solve that in relation to DNest as well.
I kind of want to
like I said, there's 2 big issues: the cycle and spirit infusion. Those are the 2 big issues.
I kind of want to throw out an idea. What if Nest lost a percentage of HP every time you play a spell?
That's been discussed, but it kills the dream of doing a synergy. It's no longer a combo. It's just you get this many dragons, and that's that we're not too fond of.
At the same time, we've seen. We've shown so many times what happens before. We let the players get these combos. This is not the first time this Spirit Infusion Dragon Nest has been an issue.
No, it was the first thing we went to as well.
Cycle, at the very least.
I actually kind of liked the infusion on the dragons when we first tested it, because you could still deal with them. Throw down a cleaver, throw down a blue golem, whatever, it kills it. It all depends on what's backing it up, of course, as Dipshit is saying. There's plenty of combos out there that take care of a Colossus or a blue golem or a flying minion. And we'll have to see if people can come up with counters. And based on that, we can see if there's more adjustment needed.
All right. I think this is a good stopping point, especially because if we continue talking about it, we can keep going on and on. This is a very big change, and I think we all need more time to think about what needs to be done moving forward. Let's move on to a change.
I want to mention one thing because it relates to all of this. Actually, it also relates to Volco.
Yes. Go ahead, Uncle.
Just that while when we're making these changes, it's not like it's all set in stone. And part of this, of these changes was also to make them relatively quickly. We don't have a large testing setup in-house, and we would rely on you guys for the really in-depth testing. Seeing the multitude of strategies that exist is kind of hard to set up before we do release of changes. Either we could do a sort of PTR thing, which we would love to, but it requires a bunch of setup and it's not something we're ready for now. Or we could try to push changes a little sooner, see how they work out, and not be afraid to make more changes down the line. And that's basically kind of what we're running here.
I feel like both of those ideas would really help. I mean, one of the biggest problems right now is we had these long periods of times where things don't change. I rather you guys make mistakes like this now, quicker, and then make another change quickly to see where we can go from there. Or because if we keep things stale and the same for so long, and we keep discussing changes that don't happen, nothing happens, and we can't really see in the grand scheme of things what players will actually loom into. And but as I said, we can talk about this all day. Let's move on to the next change. A change that got lost in the shuffle. Rampage got nerfed this patch. The buff from 100% went down to 50%. This affects 3 things in general. It affects Volco Perk 3, Raging Reinforcements, and the actual card Rampage. Okay, so Gamer, it's been a while since we heard from you. Let's hear from you.
Alright, well, I think the change might be just right for this one. I didn't get to test it as extensive as I would have liked because what I was trying to test it, the only thing I was running into was stuff that completely counters what I was attempting, at least with the specific Rampage deck I was running, which is the basic old Palace deck. That's what I was trying to test with, and there was a game that I did one where I won that I didn't actually run into like the new stuff running around, where there was a time where they actually had a chance to answer my stuff. Like, they would have been dead when they finally did answer my stuff with the old Rampage. So it actually felt like it was decent. It obviously makes like the old Palace deck, it makes it weaker, obviously, and it gives them more chance to play around, which is why it was one of the main reasons why it was changed, was so that you could play around the Rampage more instead of just getting completely wrecked by it. I think this change is really good right now. I don't know if it's too much of a change or not. But as far as I've seen, it seems okay to me. That's my input on it, I guess. So.
All right, Ezo. Again, we also have been a while since we heard from you. Let's go.
Well, the nerf Rage Poison finally happened. Someone is going to be very happy. As for my opinion, I didn't like the card before. Like, it wasn't for me. I feel like it's a win more card, and if it's not, it's a cheese enabler. Like, what I mean by that is you had pretty much 3 decks that would run Rampage and be successful. You had the Palace type of decks, and it allowed it to win faster off of 1 push only. And you had the triple Zeppelin Black Hole Rampage that Shady likes so much.
Shady and me take offense to that. We will remember this.
Yeah, and the last one that I saw Rampage used in was the Succubus or Soulstealer Spirit Infusion deck. And that was pretty much the only use I saw for Rampage on the ladder. The fact that it's been nerfed is good in the sense that the triple Zeppelin will no longer be as effective if you don't have the counter, especially now that most people will not have to run as much anti-air because DNest is changed as well. So I'm happy. Personally, I'm happy because I won't see as many cheese decks in the game. But as for the spell itself, I think it pretty much killed it. Like, it was very specific before. Now it's still very specific and it's less effective. So I think we won't see the Rampage spell being played anymore. That's, yeah, pretty much my opinion.
All right, Shady, the spell was close to your heart.
Well, I kind of agree with it, not gonna lie. Whenever me and Palace were pretty much facing each other, it was really just a coin flip on who had better hands at the beginning. So I agree with that part. It kind of sucks because I used it a lot in like all my decks, but I understand the nerf.
I mean,
sorry about
that. There's some apologies going around already. All right, everyone's favorite Dipshit. So your turn.
So, if this change happened in a vacuum, as in the other ones did not happen, I would have immediately said that Rampage is dead. 50% is not enough to change a lot of interactions. Like one of them is, Rampage Cleaver. We see it a lot. It no longer one-shots another cleaver. That you wasted 3 mana to do that. And we're now looking at where Rampage was being used before. Now Stun Blast is going to be used. Why? Because you had 5 seconds of Rampage minions versus 5 seconds of non-Rampage minions. Now you have these Rampage minions that deal only half as much damage. So technically, they need 10 seconds to get that extra 5 seconds out where they're being hit. There's a good chance they'll die, and now we have, instead of Stun Blast, where there is very little chance that they die outside of your opponent kind of trickling units in. However, with the Dragon's Nest change, Rampage is not dead. Honestly, it's another cheap spell to use with it, and that's another 2 dragons, and you buff it all up, and that's just nice to have. So,
To be
there.
to be fair to that though, Rampage is, even with the old nest, could proc a dragon.
Yeah, it could, but now you're trying to make your deck as cheap as possible to cycle as many dragons as possible, as opposed to before where you're kind of playing more of a control style, even though there's plenty of people out there that will probably want to fight me over it. That is how it worked. Rampage as a card, if anything happens to this Dragon's Nest in the next week, it's going to be in a tough spot. And honestly, I don't think that there is a real good solution to Rampage. It's either going to be meta or it's going to be dead. Like, that's just the basic design of the card, in my opinion.
Yeah. All right. Before I give my opinion, Uncle, can we have your at least from the inside, what you in the office was thinking?
Yeah, I think Dipshit hits the nail on the head in regards to it's either going to be a dead card or it's going to be too powerful, because it is a troublesome card. While we don't like killing cards, and I'm not ready to say whether Rampage is a useless spell yet. Like 50% more damage for 3 mana on multiple units could still be pretty good if you find the right place to use it. It's just not as good as it was before. But I think it's one of the reasons we did this was because it felt too cheap. It was, as Eazotop mentions, it's in a lot of cheesy decks. Sorry, Shady, and it's just swings things too much. I already mentioned some things in the developer comments, but mostly we got a lot of feedback while trying to sort of build this more esports. We have the KPC running, we had the Masters Challenge. More and more feedback was coming in that it wasn't even fun to watch these coin flip games, and I think Rampage created a lot of these situations. So in order to avoid what I call OTK decks, even though that doesn't make sense in Minion Masters, we don't want decks that can kill you in one push, basically. I suppose it's OPK decks.
1 minute kill deck.
Because
one push kill deck.
it doesn't feel like the opponent did something to kill you. He just randomly set it up, and you didn't have the right cards in hand to counter it or whatever. Or you had to build your deck to counter it. You didn't have the counter. All these things we don't really want in the game. At least not as much as we used to. We'll see if it's too bad now, and then we can consider whether we should reduce the mana. Hopefully not buffing DNest in the process, but at least we think, based on what we're seeing, Rampage could probably have a bit of a place. It's not supposed to be super popular, is another thing I should add.
I like to bring up a popular, like, at least on Twitch, it was a popular idea that was running around. What about if you just reduce the range of a Rampage? What do all of you think about that?
The radius?
I don't think that changes anything.
I don't either. I mean, you can literally just bunch your minions up better than.
Yeah, you can still fit 3 Zeppelin gun, 3 Zeppelin in the same space. So.
or 3 rammers and 2s. Like I was doing a couple, like 2 nights ago. Jolty was streaming, and I messaged him. I was like, hey, you want under 1 minute games? And we just both played the exact same deck with triple rammers, Setsus, Rampage, Stun Blast, Black Hole, and like cycle cards. You just literally get 3 rammers out in a Rampage. You can end the deck. We had a 40-second game, like, and then a 41-second game. Like it was yeah. So
I think
Yeah.
one way to make it more relevant, if it ends up being dead after the changes that DNest may happen, if it's dead after that, I think one way to make it relevant would be to reduce the travel time of the spell. Because right now, one of the reasons I don't like to play it is that depending on what my opponent does, it can end up being 3 wasted mana. If you reduce the travel time, you can have the spell, you can make it more impactful more quickly.
Oh,
It's pretty much what I wanted to say.
I always wondered what if he just does reduce damage to the face? Would it be a good idea? That's was my opinion on this entire topic.
Oh, like only apply to unit versus unit damage?
Because that's
Yeah,
what kind of Rampage was to me. It was what it should have been. It should have been this way to trade for more board presence aggressively. But at the same time, I could see that being an issue in player clarity. You don't why does Rampage not stay consistent throughout the game, right?
Or it's like Beam of Doom, right? It's half damage to face.
I would also say that someone does that they okay, I guess you wouldn't necessarily play it the way I was about to say, because I was gonna say say they rampage a cleaver, you're not obviously gonna drop cleaver, you're just gonna let it hit your face. If it's only gonna do 300, then you're gonna drop your cleaver on it. But I guess they would probably play their cleaver after you've played your cleaver, so yeah, maybe that would work. I don't know.
Yeah, so because it's a matter of your life bar is a resource you should use, and if it suddenly becomes more valuable like that, you're willing to take more risk. But then again, that's again running a risky game. So it's really up to the player whether that's worth the risk or not. Does anyone have anything more to add on the Rampage change, just before we move on from it? Yeah, I see.
Nope, that's it.
It seems that's it.
I think I'm trying to... There you go. My microphone is weird. Just to add on to it, that it wasn't just about changing the way the interactions for the master worked. We also felt that the minion interactions swung too heavily when you applied Rampage. The fact that it went from you could turn counters on their heads and stuff like that, that wasn't exactly desirable either. Even though it was mostly a cheese thing. So yeah.
Wait. I just want to answer my favorite chatter. No, I'm sorry to say, DNest got better by a landslide.
Well, Gnome is playing Colossus, right? He should be fine.
Yeah, and then no, it gets shock rocked and it can't compete. That's the problem we discussed earlier. Remember? I mean,
how do you counter shock rock?
You shock rock yourself. In the back of webs.
Oh boy.
All right, let's move on.
Let's move on to another small change, but a big one that people have been looking for a long time. Gamer, can you move the slide?
Gotcha.
Oh, you did already. Feels good, man. Raging reinforcements will now have an indicator of what unit will spawn. Again, let's start with Gamer.
Definitely nice that it won't be random when you play it. It's still random what you're gonna get, from what I understand. I actually never tested it. What you were telling me is that when you when it goes into your hand, it picks and then you'll see, right? Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I mean it's nice that you'll know what you're gonna play. Although I'm not sure how much it'll see play still, but I mean I feel like it didn't see a lot of play except for in specific decks before as well. But I mean it's interesting. I like the change, I guess is the main thing I want to say. I like that you can see it. I'm not sure with the Rampage nerf if it'll see play though. I'm hoping it will, but I don't know. So yeah, that's my input.
All right, let's move down again. Let's move down the line. Eazotop, it's your turn.
I'm really glad this change happened. It's still a bit random, but you at least know what you're gonna get before you play it, which means you can place it accordingly, which was the main problem I had because you don't play a warrior or crossbow dudes or whelp the same way. So it's definitely a card I will consider now, especially for Milowin. That's one more spell she can have that will give her breach control. And allow her not to play DNest. That you now have another way to play Milowin and still have bridge control and try to reach Perk 2 and play more around her slow turtle. I haven't tested it yet, so I'm not sure how effective it is, but I think that's definitely a card you would want to run 2 or 3 of to counter the randomness of it. So you have, even like if you have one of them in your hand and you have, let's say it's a warrior and you don't need a warrior, you can cycle the rest of your hand to have another one and hope for a better RNG, and play the warrior to free the hand space when you got it. Yeah, I think that's a good change. That's definitely, in my opinion, a card you would want to play 2 or 3 of in your deck. I don't see it being a one of. And yeah, it got hit by the Rampage nerf, but that's a 4 mana whelp that hits for 75 is still very high DPS. Like, the whelp is probably the best out of the 3 in terms of DPS. I'm not sure about the warrior. She hits for...
I
think the whelp is the... Yeah, but she hits slower, right?
She hits slower, but yeah, I think it's around the same. But the dragon might actually eke out just because it's faster.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
and then you take into account the dragon has less HP, so...
The dragon does 100 DPS, the warrior would do 70 DPS.
Yeah, so like,
Dragon deals 50, right?
With Rampage, we're talking about.
Well, with
So
Rampage now it's 75.
But with the new Rampage, it's...
Yeah, exactly.
it's
So it's 75
Gun
DPS
it down,
for
guys.
mana.
it's 75 for dragon, and for warrior it's
Yeah,
it's a
I
weird
don't know
number
the
because there's
others.
a 5
It's
in there.
52.
and there we go.
All right, Shady, you're up next, and you never.
Okay. What?
I was about to say I don't see you play this card that often, but what's your opinion on not less RNG?
I don't agree with it. I didn't really like this card in the beginning. I always like blind date with DNest and whatnot. I especially don't like that it shows you what it's gonna spawn now. I don't think that's necessary. I kind of like the RNG aspect of it.
Wow.
But
You've heard it all here.
Controversial
I
opinion.
never thought I'd actually meet a player who liked the RNG.
Right.
Oh, that was
I
a
kind of
question
like
to the
it,
designers.
but I also prefer blind date instead.
Yeah, fair enough.
Technically, Raging Reinforcements, the part of the kind of backside to it was the RNG. You weren't always guaranteed what you were gonna get, right? So I kind of agree with Shady there. It kind of was core to the card.
Okay, so should we move to me or just because I have input?
No,
on
we
that?
moved to Dip first because
All right.
that's the way we've been doing things for now on. So Dip.
So this falls into the vein of a set of quality of life changes I've been pushing for. The card is still RNG. You just know what it is, so you can properly place it. Like I understand. I don't know. I guess Shady enjoys the 50% chance to just completely throw 4 mana away or something. I don't know.
We all do at times. We like that blind date here.
Yeah.
Like, blind date's another one I've been pushing for, but it would have been a lot more vague than this change is. It's just so that you could place it properly is all. But you know, I'm fine with this change. I'm glad this change came through. I think it really helps the game, and I think Shady's a retard.
Boy, we have
Okay.
to bleep that one out. All right, Dunkel, it's your turn. You can take the stage.
Yeah, so we did consider a lot of the original identity of the card is that it's controlled random, right? And when we have these kinds of things, we're always looking at whether we can keep the card as simple as it is, and keep the identity, the intended use of it. But the issue was that I didn't see any way for the numbers to work. This was kind of the half mana buff that we had, and at the same time trying to alleviate a critique that's been coming out of, well, Dip at least for, well, since the start of the game. Or at least since the release of the card, I guess. So yeah, at 3 mana it would be too strong, I'm pretty sure. and it wasn't enough to buff the number of crossbow dudes to 4, because that's the only other real number change you can do. So we wanted to try this out, and once we got it in hand, it actually felt really fun. And it felt really powerful, because you suddenly had a lot of information that you could deal with. And suddenly it became really powerful in the hands of a King Puff with Inspire on the bridges with ranged crossbow dudes. So there was more to it than just adding the RNG.
Yeah, I generally agree. Again, I kind of agree with everyone a little bit. I'm not actually sure what I completely think of it. I kind of agree with Shady. It kind of removes kind of the core aspect of the card where the reinforcements can be played wrong and you totally flop, but that's part of the game, right? Part of the card, right? But at the same time, it's such a nice quality of life thing for players to actually work around. And I'm not sure what I think about it just yet. I probably will grow accustomed to and like it more as the game moves on. And I think that's my opinion on it. And I guess we should stop beating around the bush again and move on to one of the other big changes this patch.
Just a moment, I think the server went down. You're back.
The server went down. No, Uncle's gonna take a break, I guess.
FDM, why?
This is FDM's fault.
Well, while we wait for that, I wanted to touch on what Dip had said, partially, as well as
the retard part.
No. As far as like placement goes, he was discussing like it lets you determine better placement for the card, which I think is definitely nice. I understand Shady, like, oh, like, sure, I want to risk it, but it's better not to for a lot of people. A lot of people aren't going to feel the way Shady feels.
That's true.
I mean, and as far as like the blind date goes, that's some. I had played a double blind date deck to GM one month, and the thing about that was, you don't know what's coming, and the way that like placement on blind date, in my opinion, should always be back at the master tower. That way otherwise there's no reason to place it anywhere else.
Yeah, what I was pushing for blind date, which I guess I'll just say openly now, is the question mark on the blind date would actually color itself based on the general role of the minion that would come out. So if it was like melee, it would be red. If it was ranged, it would be blue. If it was really special, it would be yellow or something.
Yeah, I figured
like,
it was something
special
like that.
being like Gax.
Yeah, right? It just needs to tell you if it's Gax.
Technically, isn't Gax the only special one? Or what other special ones is there in the 5-mana pool?
I don't know.
Let's take a quick look, actually. Divine Warrior's a tank.
I'm back, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but if we're gonna be discussing blind date, I don't think it's the same as we intended to. So we might want to move on.
Yeah, we're gonna move on. We were just looking for we were looking for like a filler.
Yep.
All right, so let's move on. Let's again stop beating around the bush and let's talk about the next slide. Gamer, show us this change that a lot of people are angry about.
Yeah.
There it is. We don't even have a picture because we had the picture this entire time. Volco Perk 1 rework. All right, let me slowly say it and try to explain it. Volco now randomly picks one bridge. As long as Volco controls that selected bridge, for each card he plays, he hits the enemy master, for 60 damage. Okay, Gamer, since you were especially playing it and running into it earlier, I want to hear your opinion first, and it's always down the line.
I mean, I mentioned earlier on my stream before this that Uncle had mentioned this to me earlier, like last week, I guess, and at the time, I felt like I didn't know if it was going to be good or bad, but I was leaning more towards like really OP. So bad, I guess, is bad means broken, I guess. And it's different. I feel like it does not. It's not a. Words are hard right now. I feel like it doesn't help much. Like you don't have any usefulness to the game for like say an actual regular type of deck you would play until perk 2. Yes, you get maybe a little hits on the face, but it doesn't like help you anywhere else on the field. And then for the other way around, where you just try to spam while you hold that bridge and just go full face. If they don't have answers for stuff like that, the game's just over.
All right, let's talk to a player that likes the control style of the game more. Let's talk to Eazotop.
I'm really happy with the change. I didn't like the old one at all, mostly because it was extremely oppressive. If the Volco was controlling both bridges and playing swarm units, one of the best answer to swarm was plasma marines, and they would die to the bolts randomly. I think the fact that it always hits the face makes it. I haven't tested it a lot, but I think it will help the Volco close out games instead of winning it early. So when you have Perk 2, for instance, and you can control the bridges more, you have the option of doing the spammy and hitting the face to actually close out the game. The weird thing for me is that the bridge that is being picked is random, which I don't really understand why. I think it will make Volco versus Volco a bit weird. In 50% of the games, you will have to raffle for one bridge, and in the other half of the games, you will both have to fight for both bridges because one is trying to get the top one and the other is trying to get the bottom one. So you have to contest the opponent's bridge while still maintaining control of your own bridge. Same as Milowin. She also has one perk that is tied to a bridge control. I think that half of the game you will fight for the same bridge, and in the other half of the games you will be just trying to kind of contest the other bridges while focusing on your control of the other one. As for KP's bridge, I think it won't matter because he bridge swaps.
Can I explain it?
Yeah, sure.
At least
Sure, as I said, I like it if everyone interjects each other because it promotes discussion.
Yeah,
So go ahead.
the idea behind it at least, and whether it works or not remains to be seen, but the idea is actually to make it different. Is to have 50% of your games with Volco versus Volco being different, so we don't end up with Volco versus Volco always being the same. You will have, it's a random that shouldn't decide games. If it does, then there's a larger problem at work. Instead, it's a random where you're told what the board state is and how you need to play this game, which varies from the last game you played or the one before that. And hopefully that creates fun in playing the Volco and playing against Volco because it's not always the same thing.
What about the other matchups?
You mean against Midwing? It's the same thing.
I mean like Radbo Mirror or KP Mirror.
Well, they have the issues, but I can't solve everything with Volco's Perk 1. He has to be in the game.
Yeah, but I mean, you wanted to have the game be less dependent on the players and dependent on one random element of the state of the board.
No, I feel like it's dependent on the players making informed decisions about the state of the board, because it's decided when he gets the perk, and then that's how the game plays. If okay, let's say the biggest gripe we could have with it would be if you, as a Volco player, feel that where the bridge mark ends decides whether or not you're winning, as in a coin flip matchup. If that's an issue, then there's something larger at work, I feel. What we're hoping for, at least, is that against Milowin, he gets the bottom bridge. Suddenly, both Volco and Milowin have to decide between, do I want to deny the other person their perk, or do I want to keep my own? If he gets the top bridge, they both have to fight for the same bridge, and the question now becomes, do I think I can take over that and get the double whammy, or should I go for the bottom bridge and maintain control there?
So,
okay,
I want to interject here.
Yeah, sure.
In terms of just the Volco-Miloween interaction, if that bridge is selected at bottom, I imagine that matchup is going to pretty much go Volco's way almost every time, just because his deck is going to have more minions in it. And like if a Miloween decides to do anything other than the Dragon's Nest deck, she's not going to have the minions available to her to be able to continually contest both bridges.
Okay, just going back to what you said, the fact that you want players to think about the board state more, I get that, and I get that making it random will allow for different ways to play the game. But what I'm thinking about more is the deck creation part of the game, in which you might want to have a strong focus on controlling specifically one bridge, and it might weaken or strengthen your strategy depending on what bridge and how much the opponent will try to wrestle for the control. I'm not sure I'm being really clear.
Yeah. I'm just trying to figure out like that's. I guess this way that Volco is set up certainly exacerbates that element of the game, but that's a situation for all deck building games. The only way you get around the whole coin flip is by making it more samey, right?
Yeah.
And I could see there, as Dip mentions, if it favors Volco heavily based on where the mark lands, then it's not healthy. I certainly have to agree there. But hopefully it won't be that big of an issue. Or sometimes Milloween will be at an advantage and sometimes Volco will be, but it shouldn't decide the whole game, obviously.
Yeah. Well, if
All right,
it doesn't, I'm fine with it. But yeah, that was what I was kind of afraid of, that sometimes you will be highly favored or weakened by the randomness.
Yeah, if that's the case, then we have to look at it again. There's no question about that.
Okay.
Yep. All right, let's talk to a player known to lead the Illusionary Army, and a lot of people think the Illusionary Army is very strong right now. Shady, what is your opinion on this change?
I agree with it, except for the randomness bridge part. I have iffy feelings about that, but I like that it doesn't just RNG afterburners every unit on the enemy side. There's like no worse feeling than playing Plasma Marines to take a bridge and then they just get afterburnered in the face before they move. So I kind of like it that it's directed right towards the master. I agree with that change. I just don't know how I feel about the random bridge part.
All right, Dip, over to you.
So, my understanding with this change, before I got to see it in the actual notes, was that the only change that was happening was that the bolts were going to go to the master instead of a random minion, but then we got this additional, and now he only needs one bridge thing. And that has made it very difficult to justify it in my mind. Due to the fact, as they keep pointing out in chat, that's 50 cards once you have the bridge to destroy your opponent's face from full. And that's kind of a big deal, especially when you're basically just fighting over the one bridge. You're throwing everything into that one bridge, and you're going to put what on the other bridge? I don't know, puffs? So that your opponent has to deal with that. They're throwing half their forces up there maybe to deal with that while your main force is pushing through your selected bridge. And I think that's the real problem with it. I'd rather see it go back to requiring that he controls both bridges so that it moves more towards being a bonus for having both bridges as opposed to being a play style completely centered around his perk one.
I like to actually talk about that. As much as I like to see him control both bridges again, I think that was something unique to Volco that none of the other masters had. I don't think 60 face damage is worth that though. Like that's
like I said, it's a bonus. You get this bonus every time you play a card. You get to hit the face for 60 damage, and that's just nice to have.
It's nice to have.
Think about the value. Think about the value of your spells. Whenever you get to hit the face, you find value. You kill a minion, you hit the face, you suddenly think that spell's value. So this is basically the same thing, but you're playing a minion instead of a spell.
I guess, but then you have Stormbringer being able to globally affect trades. You have a King Puff being able to completely dodge trades. You have a Milloween who has half a beam in a 1-mana spell, and it's just like Volco gets 60 face damage.
But it's every card that he plays, every single card.
Yeah, again,
that's the thing. You're talking about one card that comes up every 7 cards. This is every single card. So we could be talking, 7 times 60, 420 damage is coming out every time he cycles.
I mean, like, of course, this conversation is discussing if we have both bridges, not just one. I don't know. It's kind of hard to justify on both bridges for me.
So
at least it needs a little more extra.
The change, like if it was both bridges, the only thing that would have changed would be that he now hits face instead.
Right.
And like some people are calling Volco OP, but what we felt was the issue was that he was frustrating to play against. We didn't see any evidence that he was actually overpowered and dominating, not compared to any other strategies. All the super focused things weren't they weren't dominant in a way where top 20 on the leaderboard is purely spam Volco, right? So just making him hit face would be too much of a nerf, was the feeling, also when playing it, which was why we wanted to do the bridge change, because that or the damage could be the two things we could change.
Well, here's the thing, is that this is a Perk 1. We're not talking about a Perk 3. Perk 1 isn't supposed to be game-changingly dominant over the game. It's supposed to be something that's just nice, worth roughly 3 to 5 mana. And that's basically what we're talking about with it being, 420 damage per 7 cards that you play. Like that, I could see that being, 5 mana, but with it being,
I would call it 4.2.
Whatever.
No, it's just if we're gonna talk about the value, then I'll be honest, and I usually use 1 mana for 100 damage as a good thing. Like that's a positive thing for you, which is why the number ended up at 60. Not only because it didn't need a change, but also when testing it, it proved to be. It could have an impact, you felt, but it wasn't. It wasn't like you were suddenly dying out of nowhere. It was you were dying alongside Volco usually.
That's also pretty much the only perk 1 that doesn't affect the board state at all. Like every other master has a way to gain some board presence with perk 1, or at least most of them. I think all of them actually have a perk 1 that helps them fight on the board. And whereas Volco has nothing, so it's probably going to be easier for most decks to just wrestle control of that bridge out of Volco's hand, or at least contest it. And this way you completely negate the perk 1 for as long as he's not at a stage where he dominates the game. I think that's really something that will probably have a lot of influence in the late game. If it's influential and you lose to it in the early game, I feel like you would have lost even harder to the old version of Volco. So I think that's a good change. I like it.
I have another comment on it though, just to bring in a little more perspective. Well, we considered changing it away from hitting units. Obviously, eliminated the oppressive element that Shady also talked about. He hit the nail on the head there. Just hitting the face is, I wouldn't call it a test. We're trying to see if it works, but we're not completely close to doing more if that's necessary. It's something we always consider with changes as well, whether we can try to not change too much. Something we saw fail with the DNest, which has been a continuous problem. But not changing the whole functionality of it makes it easier for people to maintain what they've learned, makes it easier for them to return to the game and all that. So we want to try to at least not change too much if it's unnecessary. In this case, we're trying this out. And maybe it's just the numbers. Maybe it's just that it's dealing too much damage because it's worth 5 mana per cycle. Or maybe it's something more fundamental than that. The one thing we were most afraid about was actually the feeling of getting face bolted. Whether that was just as frustrating as getting your minions killed. trying it out, playing with it, we saw that you at least felt like you could do something. You could play your minions, and if you couldn't take the bridge back, it felt like it was more your own mistake because you didn't play it right, or you didn't play the right cards, or whatever. You had the tools and you had the opportunity to do it, whereas before when playing against Volco, you couldn't even do anything. So that's kind of why we liked this idea and went with it, and then we'll see if it works out.
Okay, I'm gonna just try to like think about what everyone said, chat, you guys, and everything. I don't know where I completely stand with this change yet. I agree with the chat. Like, I feel when I see someone take 2,000 face damage in a matter of seconds, it's not that to me does not look fun. That does not look like the burn type of play I like to see. But at the same time, like they're like if they get any sense of control of the game, if they get any sense of puffs at all, it's suddenly 2,000 face damage that you cannot stop. Because like the blood imps are in your way, there's a real cleaver in your way that you have to kill before you can even touch a puff. Like or like just because you don't have a shock rock in your deck or something.
Yeah.
But
okay,
at the same
I see
time,
what you mean.
At the same time, like I feel like people there is like a smaller issue like where people just aren't defending well enough at this. But and I know it's hard to defend. I'm fully aware of that. It's just because you have to split your resources between what spam goes top lane, what spam goes the other bridge, and what spam goes to the bridge that you need to contest, and you have to, and you can't afford to split versus them. But at the same time, it's something like you gotta learn to manage. I mean, Gamer, you were trying it earlier, right?
Mm-hmm. But I mean, I was really only running into DNest, I feel like, when I tried it. And I think I won a game and then lost a game. And the game
Yeah,
I won, I'm trying to remember if it felt like there was much he could do at the end or not. I guess I'd have to ask him.
Yeah, you have to
It
talk
was
to
boxes that.
No, I think Boxes won to you because he played that DNest right in front, and then you couldn't do anything to contest.
Oh, is that the game I lost? I think because he used it like as a wall.
That's Boxes actually defending it. But again, another problem with what I'm saying is like you need to have specific cards to defend it. You need to have a defenso. You need to have Dragon's Nest. You need to have a wall or something, right?
Living statue.
Do you?
Yeah,
and to contest the bridge.
Yeah, and like that. But it's not every game you have those cards. Not every deck.
I feel like that's a misrepresentation. I think there's a lot of cards in the game that can deal with pure spam on one lane. Mostly because it consists of illusory cleavers and blood imps and puffs. Those are all non-threats. Anything that actually kills stuff will handle it, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, like the one threat they play, the cleaver, is so tanky, and the anti-spam suddenly becomes like I can see just run a grenadier, guys, and you can solve that problem easily. But I mean, what if they start running?
So the thing is, if you're not running any kind of anti-spam, you will lose to a ton of other decks because spam is actually it's an archetype of deck, right? It's also present in Living Statue Ratbow. It's present in a lot of cases. So if you don't have anything in your deck to deal with Volco, you have chosen to lose to the strategy, and it doesn't matter if it's Volco or the other one.
It's just a bad deck.
Yeah.
It's just a bad deck.
Like,
again,
that's at least
especially
so it to explain it in a different way. What we were hoping for with this was also that Volco has to have a greater focus on maintaining one bridge. That means Volco has to play more to the bridge control. Whether we've hit that point yet remains to be seen, but hopefully it was going to draw Volco decks further up the mana curve to the point where they were using bigger units to maintain control of the bridge. You're talking about the cleaver as the big threat, and that's certainly one way to do it. And that's, I feel, very different from pure spam that actually holds you down through spam. You're being held down by the cleaver in this situation. much more.
To be fair, though, the old Volco spam deck also ran a cleaver in it.
Yeah, the cleaver was one of the big issues you had to deal with before,
mean
because
Volco
and then
control?
if you yeah, Volco control. If you didn't actually deal with that
Quote-unquote
cleaver, you couldn't
control.
deal with the spam unless you had an AoE card.
Mm. But I think, I mean, running without any kind of AoE is dangerous in Minion Masters, and that was the case before just as well as now. It's probably less so now since your Plasma Marines don't die, and the Plasma Marines can actually push, except against the cleaver, I suppose.
Yeah, but again, we have to. I'm going to watch this deck and how it evolves because I'm very worried. Because like when I see new players, and especially when they experience that, I feel very afraid for them.
And that's possible. As I mentioned before, it's not certain that we've hit the right ability for Volco yet, but I mean, I think I'm pretty confident that it's better than before because you can at least play your minions. It might not be enough.
Also,
We might have to.
there's also that argument that gamer won a game pressing one key.
Oh, I would have.
Over and
But you
I
could do that.
would
before
have
as well.
won a game pressing one key, but I did not
No,
win
you
the
at
game.
least needed 2 keys.
If I had pressed 2 keys, I would have won the game.
If like the Volco is running a bunch of puffs and you can't punish those puffs, like there's something wrong with your deck. Puffs are meant to be like a long-term investment. If you can get them before they're even invested in, you should be able to do fine.
I
If
feel
they
like
have,
the
no balance.
biggest people that have issues with a lot of puffs, like the stuff I was seeing today with Volco spam stuff, is that you have to deal with them efficiently. You have to run multiple minions that actually split. So you run like a whirly that's only going to go one lane. So you can't deal with both bridges. Like, and if you end up playing 4 mana one lane, they can then throw 8 mana worth of puffs on the other bridge that if you don't have the mana to then answer, will generate mana before you can answer, and then you just fall so far behind.
Yeah, and hey, you wanted to say something, Uncle?
I'm trying to figure out exactly how you get to that point. I could see that being an issue because you're 4 mana behind, yes. But if you actually have the 4 extra mana that he just spent, I'm not sure. I do agree, though, that there might be... The change to only being one bridge does make it more singularly focused. And the power of spam together, we believed, was actually a nerf to it. Having spam split up in 2 lanes, I felt was stronger, because any kind of AoE would obliterate it if it was in 1 lane. It's possible it's the other way around, I suppose, but
No, I mean
I haven't
any
seen
type
that.
of AoE, any type of AoE actually stops that tactic
that's
down
enough.
straight. But the problem is if you don't run AoE.
Yeah, that's the thing. AoE kind of fell out of the meta, so people don't really run it anymore, and that's
They're afraid
kind
to
of
run
the problem.
AoE.
Let's see if it comes back with DNest and Volco.
ATG drone, good against DNest.
ATG drone.
Yeah,
You're right. You'll see how much. I want to kind of see that an ATG drone just hit all those puffs at once.
Yeah, but
So
even then,
that-
you're still only hitting 1 lane of pups.
This brings me to a final point,
Yeah.
right? That I'm not even sure it makes sense to have this roundtable right now because we haven't seen exactly what happens with the changes. It's always a risk posting the patch notes during the update because people are going to theorize too much. We've had a little more time to play, but not nearly enough to actually see the changes that it brings to the meta. I believe that if there's no AoE in the meta right now and a strategy requires it, then I don't think that's a problem. I think that's probably healthy for it. Healthy, rather.
Not Daggerfall. Like again, I don't know. I think this is just more of a new player problem. If ever, I'm not sure. Like I was talking to some boxes earlier. He was talking to me. We talked at great length, and he thinks that this deck is currently the biggest problem. But again, that remains to be seen. We'll see if people adapt. We'll see if people adjust. Another problem I have with this deck is the Disruptor Puffs in it. Disruptor Puffs can win you a game really hard.
Yeah, that's like a fundamental issue with pubs being way more, and we'll have to look at that at some point. The disruptive pubs even feeling bad in that situation. But
Apparently, Bango's coming back to me that Grenadier also did nothing to help him fix this issue.
Which, as
With
I said, it only hits one lane. And when I was testing out the super spammy Volco, I felt the need, or it felt like it was better to play most of your stuff on the lane that's not where your mark is, because they don't necessarily want that bridge as much as they want your mark. So
yeah, and then
they're
that
going
goes
to
all to
focus
your
more on
that
getting
goes
your
all to their
bridge.
face.
Yeah.
So
One
that's
thing
another.
I can see being a problem is the perk 2 actually allowing usually Volco to have a few seconds while you don't want to contest the bridges.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe that's where the spam is. Again, I haven't played much against it, so maybe it's early to tell. But
A
I
lot
feel
of them
like
are running. A lot of them are winning before Perk 2.
Mm-hmm.
all right. Well, I feel like you should be able to contest someone who is just spamming units on one bridge because you have the defender's advantage. So your deck should be able to fight against it. If you like, when I can see this deck being an issue is at Perk 2, when he can force you to not contest the bridge with burning the bridges and spam units during the time you can't do anything against it. Maybe disable the perk 1 while burn the bridge is active or something like that could help. But yeah, again, I haven't played against it much, so I don't know.
All right. So, anyone want to add anything to this conversation? Because I think most of us agree, and like we're all. I think everyone is kind of split here. Like we don't know. Some people don't think it's an issue. Some of us think it's a big issue. So no one wants to add anything. All right. That's my last question. We'll just hang out. We'll hang out at this slide, gamer. My last question is: what do you think this means for the state of the game as we are now? Again, we'll go down the line. We'll go with you, gamer, first.
I'm not even sure how to answer that question.
Just state what you honestly feel about the game right now. This is knee-jerk reactions.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
this
well,
just talk from the heart.
as far as the DNest goes, I'm not sure how that's gonna go. I mean, yes, there are multiple things you can play against it. Some things I hadn't thought of yet. Like, someone mentioned the Ghost Turret would be decent against it, but I mean, at the same time, the value of spells is severely underrated in discussion. I feel like that spells do so much even when they don't spawn dragons, But I don't know. As far as the whole state of the game, I at these current changes, I feel like may make it rough for new players. Honestly.
Let's move down the line. Ezo.
My biggest concern is the new DNest duration. Other than that, I feel like every change is pretty much a solution to something I didn't like in the game, especially the Zeppelin Rampage. Fuck you. All right. Yeah, no, everything else is. I really like it. I'm pretty excited about the game right now. I think that's going to allow us to, at least allow me to play a bunch of strategies I didn't like before, like let's say DNest or Millowin to name the two most obvious ones. So I think that's a good patch, and just keep an eye on the DNest. I think that's the biggest change of this patch. That's going to be the hardest to tweak correctly.
All right, Shady, up to you.
I personally feel targeted with this patch.
Yeah, you should.
Oh, you were.
That's
Mostly
why I had to
because of
invite you.
Rampage. Feels bad. Triple Zeppelin's not gonna work out as well.
I got
just got
personal
triple
messages
Zeppelin
saying that
boxes.
Shady at the top with triple Zeppelin Rampage was bad for the game, so you are targeted.
To be
Yeah,
fair,
I
I
got a
got
lot of
triple Zep
questions.
by boxes earlier, so it still kind of works. It just takes a little more work now.
My only issue is like the DNest. I like that they're flightless, but the duration is my only issue I think so far.
All right, let's. Community's favorite dipshit. You're
I think we're going to be in a rough patch here for a little bit.
patch.
Rough patch.
I mean, you guys are saying that the duration of the nest is a problem. I don't. I think it's the cycle. Like,
Well, it goes together, right?
Yeah.
well, sort of. Like, right now the duration is not a factor. It's the cycle. Like,
Sure it is.
like my average game length since this patch happened with my double nest deck is about a minute. Like, duration is not a factor at all. Like, if I had some reason to go to 2 minutes, 3 minutes, then duration could matter. But when I'm ending my first match, when I'm ending my average match at the 1 minute mark, it's not a factor. As for Volco, I don't know. I don't like it, to say the least. The spam's still kind of there from what I was seeing on streams. I haven't run it myself. I haven't really played against it other than running into LP running it, and that's really it. So I don't have the biggest evidence to work from, but my initial reaction is that the spam isn't really gone. It's just moved.
All right.
It wasn't supposed to.
Just the fact
Right.
that it doesn't give board control to
bridge
Volco, I
control
think
or broad control is the issue.
It's,
Board control
it's very clearly still a design goal of the perk to facilitate spam decks. Like that, there's no denying that. Whether that entirely needs to go, no, we can look at that. But it's for now, that's still there. And now I'm not even going to give my closing comments. I'm just going to keep talking. But it's also there because we want to create clear and fun strategies for the players to work with that they see when they see some part of the game. They see a demon warrior. They think, okay, I can make this one the biggest unit in the game. I'm gonna try and play a control-y type of deck. Or they see Ratbow and they see they need to play tons of minions to swarm the board. Or they see Volco and they see his perk and they see they need to play cheap cards to whittle their opponent down. And it's definitely part of that. Whether it's done in the right way, I suppose we'll have to look at.
I don't like the concept of raw spam. Like, spam behind a big unit, I'm cool with that. Raw spam is what I'm not cool with.
Yeah,
especially when you're not caring which card is coming into your hand.
If you can play any card, just have 10 1-mana cards, basically, if you could do that. And just play that, no deal. That's not a fun strategy. Definitely, I agree with that. The hope with this also was to make Volco players have to play more control as well, in a way. Or play more standard, you would say. I guess that's sort of where they're getting.
All right. Okay, I'll go. I'm gonna actually give you the chance at bat anyway. So, what is your close? Like, at least from a not as a patch standpoint, but as a discussion standpoint, where do we stand here?
I think it was really interesting to hear some more opinions. There's nothing I hadn't expected. Sorry, guys, but I think there's some things to keep an eye on. And we knew there was going to be some. I have to admit, this patch, we didn't have a ton of time to make all of this. Well, that's no excuse. We felt like we needed to move on balance changes because we had been down prioritizing it. Perhaps we moved too fast. Perhaps we should have focused more on one change and not the others. But then, hey, with no DNest change at all, we wouldn't even have moved one step further to try and find the right spot for it. We're starting to see a pattern in DNest as a really problematic card, and I'll have to go home and think in the shower to figure out exactly how we solve that one.
All right. I guess it's my turn. I agree with Golb and Gamer. We're in for a rough one, guys. Especially with the Volco one, the community's so split on what it is, whether it's strong, whether it's weak, whether it's something that needs immediate changing, and or anything. And I just hope we can, like the game as a community, we can come together and discuss this thoroughly, and give the devs as much data as we can, and hopefully, see changes if changes are needed as quickly as possible, and as thoroughly as and as non jading as like the ones we have now. And I guess that's it. I guess with that, I'm gonna close the roundtable. I hope you guys have a good day. If you want to see some gameplay, I think Gamer will you be starting up your stream after this.
Yes, I definitely will be doing
And
that.
Shady?
So.
Shady, will you also be starting up yours?
No.
No. So in my closing, I'll hopefully if you want to see some gameplay, if you want to see some of these players theorize more, think about it more, check out Video Gamer 77 stream for now.
Yep.
And I hope to see you next time on the round table whenever we get the chance to do something like this again. I also like to thank the guests.
Thank
Gamer,
you.
you can sign us off now.